Now I'm going to touch on costs. I'm not going to give you a comprehensive analysis. We're doing pretty well on time here, but I'll give you a summary. The front end expenses for your Reg A Plus, which include, things like marketing, preparation, and legal fees and audit costs. Big, I have to make some huge assumptions to give you any kind of cost when audits are involved, because some companies have very, very messy financials, and having to audit them may be very time consuming and expensive. But for a company with a relatively simple audit situation, about 150 or $160,000 in total front-loaded expenses prior to qualification is reasonable. You never want to have no spare money, but that's to give you a sense of the upfront costs. You can save some money probably with some at lower cost legal service providers for that, but in that realm. And of course, that's assuming a simple audit. I can't tell you what your audit costs will be sitting here on the other side of the computer, right? The ongoing expense depends hugely on whether you're totally dependent on our member base of investors or on, and particularly on advertising outreach to bring in new investors, because the biggest expense is in marketing the regs, right? And the biggest expense in that is advertising outreach. And obviously, it's incumbent on us to only do raises where we have high confidence that the company is appealing enough inherently in what it's doing and in how it can be described and made clear, and that the appeal will be there for people who are looking online and have a limited attention span, right? Because somebody who saw that ad will only come if they like what they see. And if they have to spend 2 hours reading the offering page to make sense of the company, they're not going to do that. That just won't happen. If they can get it at a glance, in 20 or 30 seconds, get a glance and understand and find it appealing, then they'll stay longer. And now we have a chance to get them to invest at a relatively low cost. So what does that mean? The least expensive Reg A Plus that we've seen one of our customers do, where we have clear knowledge of their total cost, was 6.5% total cost for a biotech company. But that was a special case with a non-opioid painkiller in this era of many addicted people with opioid-based pain medicines, and a lot of deaths and ruined lives as a result. And a lot of physicians and anesthetists invested in that raise. So their average offering investment amount was about $8,000 as a result. But if you're raising more than 10 or $12 million, then, because the percentages are very meaningless if you would never do a Reg A Plus for $1 million, it would be silly, too much expense and too much work. But once you're raising more than $4 million, then it make more sense in my view. But if you're raising 10 or $12 million for a company we should be doing, then 10, 12, 14% cost of capital is reasonable. And the larger the amount of raise, then when we get efficiencies going and we can engage institutional investors these days as well, that can further reduce the cost. So you may see lower costs in total. And the involvement of broker dealers will influence that. We are not a broker dealer. We don't charge broker dealer commissions. As a result of that, our fees are very low relative to other sources of other platform sources. Most of the Reg A Plus platforms charge 6 or 6.5% commissions, and they are not doing the marketing, so they have to do all of the marketing, so that jacks up the cost significantly. But I've given you a reasonable guide there on what the costs are. If you enter into a Reg A Plus with the idea that you intend to go list on the NASDAQ, but without committing to that at the front end, which is to say, without paying the attorney to do that work at the front end. They don't need to do the work at the front end. You can file your Reg A Plus, and let's say 6 months in, you've got enough confidence, raised enough money from enough investors that you want to either do a direct listing or engage an underwriter, and there's enough interest from them, then you can convert the Reg A Plus, the format, but almost none of the content changes, but the format is changed to conduct the listing on the NASDAQ or on the NYSE. And when you do that, you have to have a PCAOB audit for the prior quarter to the listing date. And post-listing, the securities attorney does other filings that adjust the content of the Reg A Plus IPO then to a complete S1 level. So subsequent filings are made to bring it up, and that increases the cost. So where you might spend 60,000, $40 to $60,000 on a security attorney to do your Reg A Plus, if you flip it into listing on one of the major exchanges, then that will go up to around $100,000, rough numbers. But you don't commit to that and you don't spend that until you make that change in approach. In the same way, you don't incur the PCA or the audit expense until you're ready to. Okay, and if you do list on the major exchanges, direct list or through an underwritten stage where you might add another 10 or $15 million to the raise with the underwriters to make it worth their while, then you are obligated thereafter to do quarterly PCAOB audits, obviously, if you're on the NASDAQ or on the NYSE. But if you list on one of the minor exchanges like the OTCQB or QX, then a once-a-year GAAP audit is sufficient on the audit front. So that's pretty light burden compared to the companies that were demoted down to those exchanges from one of the major exchanges.